Biden-Harris White House wants to revive an Obama-era policy on zoning laws. Now, it gives the federal government undue influence over local property rights. It sounds boring, but it is very important because potentially it could impact your neighborhood. This is part of their $2.5 trillion infrastructure package. The allegation from Democrats is that zoning laws and single-family homes are, like everything else these days, racist. It is amazing, right, that they can't seem to get any bipartisan support on anything, while at the same time they're calling everyone and everything racist. Now check out this article from Reuters right here. Headline: Biden seeks to ease housing shortage with $5 billion carrot, no stick approach. The $5 billion plan that they're talking about here would inject the White House into a debate pitting older homeowners against younger workers seeking to gain a foothold in the most expensive U.S. cities. The idea here is to change zoning laws so that that restrict many neighborhoods to single-family homes. Now, this person here says it's an enormous step forward. Very few politicians have taken the next step to propose something really meaningful to change the system. So says this guy, Richard Kellenberg. The Reuters article says he is a housing expert at the Century Foundation, which is a progressive think tank. Now, Reuters also highlights the fact that zoning laws were rare in the U.S. until 1917. That's when the Supreme Court struck down laws that prevented black people from buying property in white neighborhoods. That was a case called Buchanan versus Whaley. Now, in response, local governments started setting up minimum lot sizes, making it almost impossible to build low-income housing and apartments in many neighborhoods. But that was then, and this is now. And are we supposed to believe that in America in 2021 zoning laws are racist? Why? Why exactly? Now, a University of Pennsylvania Business School study found that coastal cities, including New York and San Francisco, have increased their zoning laws the most since 2006. Other top cities in America with restrictive zoning laws include Seattle, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, all progressive strongholds. Now, liberals clearly like their zoning laws and single-family homes. They just don't want you living in them in the suburbs, right, where you live. Now, the Reuters article we focused on here also holds up, wait for it, Minneapolis and Portland, Oregon, as making, quote, a similar change, similar to the Biden-Harris zoning policy for urban areas in those cities. So as we are watching those two cities being hollowed out right now by Marxist activists, we're supposed to emulate the policies of those cities. Now, at the same time, we're also seeing one of the BLM co-founders, Patrisse Khan-Cullors, buy a $1.5 million home in a mostly white neighborhood in Los Angeles. That's part of a bigger $3 million real estate portfolio she secured for herself, drawing criticism even from BLM protesters who talked to our cameras yesterday in New York.
I feel that if you got money off of donations and you got a house, why people is not in that house?
It's, a grassroots movement for change is not about making money.
Apparently it is, and investing that money in real estate. Now, the progressive left in the Biden-Harris administration are using this and race to consolidate power. And they think we're all stupid, especially conservatives. And if you're not with them on zoning laws or anything else, you are less than them. Take a listen to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki talking about how the White House plans to reach out to conservatives while discussing vaccine reluctance.
We're also looking for, we've run PSAs on the deadliest catch. We're engaged with NASCAR and country music TV. We're looking for a range of creative ways to get directly connected to white conservative communities.
Well, instead of pandering to us on our favorite TV shows that you think we all watch, stop lying to us and stop calling conservatives racist every single time you want to push a new policy. It is really just that simple. Let's welcome in now journalist, author, and host of the Trish and Tell podcast, Trish Regan. Great to see you, Trish.
Great to see you, John.
So,
really well done commentary.
Thank you. I mean, I'm just amazed because it's 2021 and everything is either infrastructure or racist, and sometimes it's both, right? Like zoning laws, racist, and we got to change them to go along with this infrastructure plan.
Well, the tricky thing about the racism card is that it's very hard to refute that, right? If somebody calls you a racist, what do you say? Right now, especially because if you say, well, no, I'm not a racist, they say, aha, you don't recognize it, therefore you are. If you don't recognize it, then you're most definitely. I mean, it's like you can get twisted in knots here, but it's a pretty serious, heinous allegation to make against another American. And look, I'll point out the obvious. We elected a black president twice. We now have a vice president of the United States, a woman, a minority woman there in the White House. I think America, I'm not saying that there aren't pockets of racism out there, but we've come a heck of a long way. And we really are, for most intents and purposes, a meritocracy.
Right.
Now, there are socioeconomic challenges that I wouldn't disagree with. I mean, look at Chicago, for goodness sakes. I mean, kids not in school in Chicago, and you got lousy leadership there that doesn't actually confront the teachers' unions and make, the teachers get back into school. We have pockets of socioeconomic problems that are very, very real. But in terms of who we are as Americans, I'm sorry, we're bottom line oriented.
Right.
We're capitalists.
Right.
Hey, Patrice just proved that, right? With her $1.4 million purchase.
It's the American dream, right, Trish?
Just get the job done.
Whether you are an activist, a teacher, a journalist, it is the American dream, right? You start in a city or in some place where you have a crappy apartment, you work your ass off, and you get to buy a house, a single-family home, right, with a piece of property that can be your own. That is the American dream. She has a right to it just like everybody else. I mean, as long as she does it legally. But that's, they're against that now. This is about power. It's about redistributing wealth and all those things. Let's set that aside for a second, too, because I always love to talk about big tech with you. And we got Josh Hawley, who actually kind of seems to get it now. He is pushing for the Trust Busting for the 21st Century Act, finally modernizing this stuff. Have you had a chance to take a look at this yet, and what do you think?
Not in great detail, but just my overall perception of it is, look, we need to think long and hard about technology. We need to make sure enough people in this country have access to technology, and we need to make sure that it's equitable and that it's fair and that you don't have an environment where the big tech companies are basically running the show. Right? Which is exactly what has been happening, John. They are running the show. And, it cracks me up because whether it's Jeff Bezos saying, sure, I'm all for higher taxes, while he has a whole bunch of operations overseas in lower tax jurisdictions, or if it's Google, which has an army of workers working in Ireland, where it's 12.5% tax. Look, our American tech companies need to step up. Right? We need to make sure everybody has fair access, and we need to make sure that these companies are not running sort of a shadow government of their own.
Right. And this is the important thing, too, about taxes that Democrats don't seem to want to admit, is that they are the globalists, but they don't want to admit we have a global economy and that you just can't punish Americans with high taxes, because that's what it is. It's a punitive tax code for them. They want to punish wealthy Americans and job creators with higher taxes. But as you indicated, that stuff just moves overseas. Now, here's what Hawley told Axios. The country and this government shouldn't be run by a few mega corporations, and the GOP has got to become the party of trust busting once again. Teddy Roosevelt was known for this. I mean, this is the issue. Again, it's big versus small, David versus Goliath. And if we don't protect the small business owners, the Davids in this equation, we're going to be, all subject to the Silicon Valley groupthink.
Sure. I mean, it feels sort of quasi-USSR like out there sometimes, or North Korea like sometimes. The fact that Google is able to, it's like we're all working for Google.
Right.
Whether or not this video shows up somewhere, it may be on Newsmax.com, but ultimately it's up to Google whether or not people see it. That's problematic, especially when you're in an environment, John, where there's not a lot of other players out there. And anybody who comes along gets squashed by the biggies. So, look, I've gotten in a little trouble with Google for saying this before, but I'm going to say it again. The company's a monopoly. Right. And somebody's got to get in there and say enough. It has to be broken up. And by the way, this is for the benefit of everyone. This is not just for the left. This is not just for the right. This is for American society, for freedom.
Right. It is unnatural to have this much power consolidated. Actually, it is natural, but it's not natural for this country. It is, an anathema here. We've never seen anything quite like this before, the way they control information. Real quick, Trish, we got about a minute left. A lot of talk about Jerome Powell these days. He thinks the economy is headed for great things. Some people not so sure. Are folks being too hard on Jay Powell?
No. I'm going to.
I knew you were going to say that.
By the way, he's on my naughty list, okay? Okay. You do not leave the spigot open like this for this long. I mean, the guy doesn't want to raise rates, John, until 2024. Come on. You saw the CPI numbers today, which measure consumer prices. Yep. We have inflation. It is here. We have a lot of inflation. Fourth month in a row. And it's going to continue, and it's going to continue, and it's going to continue, because you got the double combo here. You got Powell and you've got Biden, and they're both like, they think money grows on trees.
Right.
They're just going to spend. You can't tell me that that's not going to have an inflationary effect. We're already seeing evidence of it. Effectively, this erodes Americans' purchasing power. It means that, one day you're going to walk into Starbucks and that latte that was already bad enough at $5 is suddenly going to be $35. In other words, you won't have as much purchasing power with the money you've saved thanks to Powell and thanks to Biden. It is a disaster. Larry Summers, by the way, former Treasury Secretary for the Clinton administration, as well as head of the National Economic Council for Obama, he's calling it out.
Yes.
He's one of the very few.
It was interesting with Larry Summers, too, because he called it out, and then you could tell somebody got a hold of him. He tried to kind of walk it back, and then he had to come out again and be like, whoa, 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 not now another $2.5 trillion, that's too much. The next time any of these folks actually takes a question from the media, I would love to see the simple question, Trish. It's a great question to ask out-of-touch politicians. When was the last time you bought a gallon of milk, and how much did you pay for it? I don't think Jerome Powell knows. I don't think Joe Biden has any idea. Neither does Kamala Harris. I would love to ask him that simple question.
How about gas prices?
Or gas prices, too, is another
one.
one.
Through the roof.
A loaf of bread, a gallon of milk, a gallon of gas. These are all things that Americans are feeling right now for sure. Great to see you, Trish, as always. We'll see you on the podcast.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.